also transmission will be key in drawing up this roadmap out of lockdown. Can you go into the specifics on how you work out if it's vaccines bringing down these numbers and reducing transmission, or if it's only falling because everyone is under a national lockdown? And to the Prime Minister, on the World Health Organization's investigation in China into the origins of the pandemic, you've said that you support US President Joe Biden in the need for transparency. Who do you hold responsible for the lack of transparency so far, and what actions are you planning to take?
Chris, you want to do the question about...
The first one, I mean, there's an extremely long answer. The short answer is initially the studies are being done, something called case control studies. But what we will hope to see in time is we'll actually see in order the rates going down of severe disease and mortality exactly following the order in which people were vaccinated. And I think what we really want to get to is the point where we can see, in a sense, with the naked eye, the big effect of the vaccines, rather than having to do quite complex calculations of the vaccinated against the unvaccinated, which is where we are at the moment. So that's very much the direction of travel. But if you look at the data, for example, from Israel, you actually can see the effect. In the UK, we can calculate an effect, but it's much better when we can actually see it, when it's big enough to actually be able to see.
Yes. What we are seeing, I think, in some of the early data from the NHS is what looks like a signal in terms of the impact on vaccination, but we really want to let the clock run for another week, fortnight to be able to properly validate that.
And impact on transmission will take longer to determine than impact on mortality and severe disease.
So, Alistair, on your question about what happened and how to and who to hold accountable for transparency, I think it's fairly obvious at the moment that most of the evidence seems to point to the disease having originated in Wuhan. That seems to be where the consensus is at the moment. Therefore, I think we all need to see as much as we possibly can about how that might have happened. The zoonotic questions that people are asking, I think we need as much data as possible, and I think what the world do ask, what are we going to do about it, Alistair? I think what the world needs to see is a general agreement on how we track the data surrounding zoonotic pandemics. We want zoonotic research hubs around the world, and we want a general agreement on transparency. And I think one of the attractive ideas that we've seen in the last few months has been a proposal for a global treaty on pandemics, so that signatory countries make sure that they contribute all the data they have, and are able to get to the bottom of what's happened and stop it happening again. I think that is the sensible thing to do. Okay, everybody, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
And that concludes the latest coronavirus briefing from number 10 Downing Street. Let's just take a look quickly at some of the main points that came out of that briefing. The Prime Minister said that we don't have all the facts we need, but that he does want this to be the last lockdown. Although he was asked whether he could guarantee this would be the last lockdown, this third lockdown. And he said actually he couldn't give that guarantee, so no guarantee that this is the last lockdown. The Chief Medical Officer for England, Professor Chris Whitty, warned that the level of infection is still high, with hospitalisation rates similar to those in April, at the height of the first peak. And the Chief Executive of NHS England, Sir Simon Stevens, outlined plans for the next phase of the vaccination programme. He urged over 65s to try to go to larger vaccination centres and pharmacists, and the GPs can focus on those people who've got underlying health conditions. And Professor Whitty also, by the way, said there was reasonable evidence that a booster jab will be needed in the autumn. So let's go to our health correspondent, Nick Triggle. And Nick, we know that the government are going to set out their roadmap out of lockdown next Monday, and that they've said again and again that they're studying the data